Hey, welcome World Entertainment, and Blade, the movie that will never be under Marvel Studios. Well, the whole plot and plans for that 1920s movie setting, yeah, it's leaked. The whole thing has leaked online to what we would have gotten, and it's hilarious that we're going to look at this. And just when you think of all the stuff that this studio has done to manage not to make this movie, it's insane. When you think of all you have to do is put him in his leather trench coat and stuff and have him kill vampires, and ironically that's the very thing that Kevin Feige was like, we can't have him just killing vampires. It's like, oh, okay. So let's take a look at this, because it's insane, because we are now 7 years since this thing was announced. So, at San Diego Comic-Con in 2019, Marvel Studios President Feige welcomed Mahershala Ali to the MCU by announcing a Blade reboot. 3 years later, the executive told fans in Hall H that the reboot would arrive in theaters on November 3rd, 2023. It then moved to September 6, 2024, and then eventually slipped further down the calendar to February 4th, 2025. For a time, Blade was eyeing a November 7th, 2025 release. We'd hoped the movie might meet that date, but it was soon removed from Marvel Studios' schedule altogether and taken back to the drawing board, having already gone through multiple creative teams. So, in the past 6 years, it's gone through at least 2 directors who apparently left over creative differences, and get this, 6 so far that we know of writers that were working on different versions of the script. So in recent months, we've heard conflicting reports about whether Blade could eventually be scrapped. It's already been scrapped. Not much has ever been officially revealed, but we do know that a 1920s setting was considered. In fact, the idea got so far along enough for Ryan Coogler's Sinners to purchase and repurpose many of the costumes that had been made, which we've heard that. And it wasn't the fact that he pretty much purchased it, it was that Marvel found out about Sinners. Sinners was the same story they wanted to tell with Blade, and they caved and gave him the costumes and stuff. Which, by the way, I want to point out, I find that hilarious for the fact that one of the Oscars that Sinners is up for, it's up for 16, the most in Oscar history. I don't know why, it's not that good of a movie, but one of the categories it's up for is Best Costume Design. It's like, you're up for an Oscar for something yous didn't do. Yous literally took the costumes for another movie. So I wonder exactly, did they look into that, or did they just went, black people, quick, give them all the awards? I don't know. So now, a supposed full breakdown of the original Blade script has surfaced on Reddit. There are no telltale signs of AI usage, and much of this does line up with what we've heard about Marvel Studios' early plans for the movie. That includes a huge role for Blade's daughter and plans for Lantern star Aaron Pierre to play the villainous Aaron Tyrone, before Marvel Studios pivoted to Maya Goth's Lilith. There's also no mention of the Ebony Blade, which in later drafts became the reboot's MacGuffin, explaining Eternal's open-ended post-credits scene. The period setting is undeniably unique, but Marvel Studios has had a mixed fortune with telling stories in this way. In hindsight, for example, placing Captain Marvel in the 1990s has done Carol Danvers few favours. So, we're going to have a look at what this whole plot breakdown was meant to be. So let's go with it. So, read the script for Marvel's Blade movie, the first version anyway, set in the 1920s. It's not bad, but it's very different from the Wesley Snipes movies and an average MCU movie. So I can see why Marvel got cold feet about it. It plays out almost like a supernatural fairy tale told from the perspective of Blade's daughter, Zora. It begins with Zora witnessing her mother being killed by a pack of vampires led by main villain Aaron Tyrone, who was obviously meant to be Aaron Pierre playing him. A big part of this script is that vampire fathers pass their vampirism to their kids. Thrawn is the son of one of the vampire elders who was recently killed by Blade, and the other elders have denied him his father's position since he's a half-black bastard. Okay, so he has gathered other outcast vampires to topple the elders. His plan, by the way, doesn't this just sound very much like Deacon Frost in the first movie, that he wants to become the head of the vampires and wants to get rid of the elders? So his plan is to sacrifice Zora and drink her blood so he and his followers can become daywalkers like Blade. That is the first bloody Blade movie. So Zora escapes and hides with this old voodoo lady her mother didn't want her to hang out with. Voodoo Granny calls for Blade. Good God, is that what the character's called? Voodoo Granny? Alright. So the vampires track Zora down and attack Voodoo Granny's house. Blade appears, kills one of the vampires, and Thrawn escapes with the other three. Blade only shows up around page 15 of the script. Zora finds out Blade is her father. Voodoo Granny tells Blade that Zora is not safe in New Orleans. Blade takes Zora away and Voodoo Granny gives her a silver locket before they leave. Blade drives Zora to the estate of Quincy Hacker, a wealthy descendant of Jonathan Hacker, whose family finances vampire hunters for generations. There, Blade and Zora meet two other hunters, Rachel Helsing and Taj Nettle. She is a descendant of Van Helsing and bonds with Zora, while Taj is an Indian warrior who has taken a vow of silence after his family was killed by vampires. Blade needs Hacker's help to figure out why Thrawn is after Zora. Blade learns about the ritual, which Blade and Hacker both doubt would work. This is when Zora finds out Blade is a half-vampire and she is frightened. He explains how his mother was bitten while pregnant and that a vampire hunter named Jamel Afari raised him. Delroy Lando would have played this role. Jamel runs a black settlement and Blade will take Zora there to hide. Blade and Zora take a train to Jamel's settlement. They bond during the trip, and Blade reassures Zora that vampire children only develop the thirst when they hit puberty and only become true vampires when they first drink blood. Jamel trained Blade, but kicked him out of when Blade was lost control and killed Jamel's son. The Voodoo Granny is Jamel's ex-wife who loved Blade like a son and followed him to New Orleans. She created a potion to help Blade keep his thirst at bay. Blade fell in love with Zora's mother and got her pregnant. He left unwilling to endanger her and Zora, but asked Voodoo Granny to watch over them. He then linked up with Hacker and his network and began hunting vampires. Thrawn and his men attack the train, leading to a big action scene where they hunt Blade and Zora through the cars. Blade kills another of Thrawn's followers and has a fight with Thrawn before escaping with Zora as the train derails. They reach the settlement. Blade has a tense reunion with Jamel, but he agrees to shelter them. Zora learns Blade plans to leave her behind with Jamel and resume his crusade, and is sad. Jamel has a heart-to-heart with Blade where he apologizes to Blade for being a bad father and chasing Blade away, and pleads Blade not to commit the same mistake with Zora. So Thrawn attacks the settlement with a bunch of vampires he created from the victims of the train crash. They destroy the settlement. While Thrawn kills Jamel and abducts Zora, Blade is captured and tortured after Thrawn leaves. Rachel and Taj arrive, kill the vampires, torturing Blade, and rescue him. So they go back to Hacker's house to figure out where Thrawn could have taken Zora. There Blade connects the dots and figures out Hacker sold him out to Thrawn. That's how Thrawn located them on the train and later on the settlement. Hacker rationalizes they can use Thrawn to wipe out the elders and then kill Thrawn and his followers. Zora's life is a necessary sacrifice since the ritual won't work. Blade, Rachel and Taj cut ties with Hacker and leave him behind to rescue Zora. Hacker later kills himself out of shame. Blade, Rachel and Taj attack the temple where Tron is preparing to sacrifice Zora. Take out Tron's followers and we get fights between Blade and Tron, Rachel and Tron's henchwomen, and Taj and Tron's henchmen. Taj is killed in the fight and dies in Rachel's arms, while Tron gets the upper hand on Blade until Zora stabs Tron with the silver locket, allowing Blade to catch his second wind and push Tron toward the rising sun, where Tron bursts into flames. The vampires had destroyed Blade's spare potion earlier, so he begins to succumb to the first and go feral. But Zora manages to get through and get him to control himself long enough for her to make some more potion. She learned it from Voodoo Granny. Rachel inherits Hacker's fortune and keeps financing vampire hunters. Blade and Zora return to New Orleans and reunite with Voodoo Granny. Zora realizes she can't stay with Blade because it's dangerous, and they part ways, with Zora staying with Voodoo Granny and Blade watching over her from the shadows. We then get a montage of Zora growing old, using Granny's potions to keep her thirst at bay. She never becomes a full vampire, ages like a normal person, marries, has kids and dies of old age in the 90s. Blade attends the funeral and has a brief interaction with his granddaughter, who doesn't know who he is. He says he's an old friend of the family before walking back into the shadows. And that apparently was the movie. My good God, does that sound trash? Especially the end. How exactly did she die when she was half fucking vampire? So she should have lived pretty much forever, just like Blade, so that makes no sense. And the whole first part of it and the whole villain's arc was just from the first Blade movie, so you rip that off. And then the fact that you notice everybody around Blade was women, the person, no whisker or something like that. Instead they give him Voodoo Granny, who helps him and trains him and makes his potions, while this other guy, Hacker, gives him more training and stuff like this. And then his helpers are a mute Indian and a woman, and then his daughter saves him, and it's just like, Jesus Christ, it's no wonder this thing can't get bloody made. That sounds disastrous. So there you go. There is the supposed 1920s setting and full breakdown of what the story was. And of course that was meant to stay the same when they took it out from being your man Throne and put in Maya Goth's Lilith. It was still meant to be the same type of thing. So yeah, it's no wonder they can't get this thing figured out when Blade isn't even the main character and didn't show up in the script until the 15th page. Good God, Mahershala Ali, yeah, he's done. He's not played. Nobody's Blade. You know why? Because there is no Blade. But let me know what you think of that script and the idea. And with that, I shall leave there for this one. So do like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Cheers, and I'll catch you in the next one.